episode, our third episode of the Union Podcast. I'm here with my sister, Carrie Rodriguez, and I'm starting to sound redundant, Carrie. I keep saying it's been a busy week. Every Friday, I said it's been a busy week, and it never disappoints. You've been moving and shaking. I literally just got back from an event early this morning. I'll talk about. But again, we are the Union Podcast. Your up-to-date weekly dosage, micro dosage of news, politics, policy, research, polling, and advocacy, meaning action. You want to get involved. You're tired of hearing about things going on. You want to get involved. Here's how you find out how. We're going to give you up-to-date news on what's happening at the federal level, what's happening in states, what we're hearing from elected officials on education, that you can be equipped to fight for education for your children, if you're a teacher, for your students, if you're a school leader, if you're a politician, for your constituents in education. And I could not do without my super mom, super wife, super Massachusetts Bostonian, parent of the year, St. Charles River. Carrie, how you doing?
Man, you talk about a busy week. And you listen, the cheese may is not going to get hotter than it is on this podcast, because we just did 40 visits in the United States Senate.
40?
40 parents from across the country. We flew them in. We needed to talk about this big, beautiful bill. So they hit the ground running, mostly from red states. A lot of families coming in from red states with deep concerns about Medicaid cuts, about SNAP cuts, about increases to their responsibility around how to pay for college, and cuts to public education. So as I said before, we were going to release a poll, but releasing a poll and, putting together a little PowerPoint, sending it out to the press, that's not enough. Not enough in these times. So we had to get down there, make sure we had those meetings, get right in front of the Senate, to make sure the voices of American families were heard loud and clear. So we did that in conjunction with some beautiful friends of ours. And I want to give a shout out to EdLock, Education Leaders of Color, who had a wonderful delegation of folks from across the country, as well as Educators for Excellence. We did an amazing rally yesterday right outside the U.S. Senate, and we were fired up. You probably heard us from where you are, Curtis, because we were out there. No ifs, no buts, no education cuts. We were right there in the mix, and we were hooting and hollering, and it was pretty spicy, I'll tell you.
So let's jump right in. Talk about particularly why you're there this week, what you all were armed with when you went to talk to these elected officials. What were you telling them when you got there? And then what were you hearing from them during these meetings?
Super important, because committee by committee in the U.S. Senate, folks are taking a look at this big, beautiful bill and trying to figure out, what's going to be there. What is it going to be? How differentiated it's going to be from the House bill that only passed by one vote. And Lord knows, after it passed the House with that one vote margin, all of a sudden, all these Easter eggs, these little goodies started popping out of that bill, and people saying, oh, wait, the federal government is going to be in charge of AI regulation. We're going to take this right away from the states. And people had a lot to say about all these little things they were finding in this 1,000-page bill that they didn't know they were voting for. So the Senate is going through their process right now, and there actually is some room for negotiation here. I will tell you, we again talked to senators on both sides of the aisle, bringing in parents and families from red states. We talked to everybody from Susan Collins to Josh Hawley to Lisa Murkowski, bringing to them directly the information they need to know about how opposed American families from their states actually are. And so bringing their constituents in there to say, hey, 83% of American families do not want you to cut public education. And that's not Democrats, folks. We're talking about 77% of Republicans, 88% of independents. Mm-hmm. And right in your own state, you're literally cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're hurting your own constituents. And so by bringing these families in to say, hey, we're going to tell everybody back home how you're voting and how you're behaving in DC, it was pretty powerful. And you can see how some of that shifted, because already some of the language is changing a little bit. You saw coming out of the Senate Help Committee, where they took a crack at this big, beautiful bill, some big changes to Pell, because folks were really upset, really concerned about what was going to happen with Pell. We're talking about cutting, the student work programs, the Parent Plus programs,
Yep.
all of these things, right? And so, Chairman Cassidy was saying, hold on a second, we can't be doing this. This is really going to hit a lot of folks in Louisiana. And so that's really the message that we were bringing to them. Like, don't forget how many folks back in your state, people like the ones that we represent, are going to be hurt, and they're going to be real upset if you decide to go along with this plan. So it looks like even on the SNAP benefits, which sometimes can be hard to crack that nut with Republicans sometimes, but we went in with a strong message. Hungry kids can't learn. It can be the beginning of the school to prison pipeline. Again, you and I have talked about, kids acting up in class, getting sent to the principal's office because they're hungry. Like, that can be the first step to punitive discipline and all these other things. So they did seem to soften. We're seeing some Republicans start to say, hold on, we can't do that either. So remains to be seen where we come out, but there was some progress made this week for sure.
We appreciate you. I mean, I think there are people listening in who, again, they want to get involved. I mean, and I think I'm glad that they're listening in to us. This is where you start to kind of know what's happening, and they can't be everywhere. And you can't sort of spend all your time everywhere, but there are certain days and times and groups that you could work with when you have time. Let me ask you, just as we sort of wrap this up, what are other ways that people who are listening in who can't get to Washington can get involved and to voice their opinions about this bill and how it's affecting their children and their students?
I got to tell you, if you are a teacher who is listening to this podcast right now, we need you, especially if you are a teacher of color. There are two fantastic organizations you can get in on this action right now. Educators for Excellence. I'm biased. I'm proud to be a member of their board, but man, they are top tier when it comes in, coming in hot, coming in fierce, coming in ready with the right messaging, and getting you in the places where your voices can be heard. So if you're a teacher sitting out there right now saying, oh my gosh, I'm so worried about these babies in my classroom every single year. I'm so worried about my profession and what the future is going to look like. Educators for Excellence is a great place for you, and you should get involved. And you can. It's as easy as going to their social media pages right now, or hit up Evan Stone. He'd love to hear from you, and he will get you connected. EdLock. EdLock, if you are a leader in education, you need to come on this journey with us. I can't say it enough. Heather Harding from EdLock wants to hear from you. So if you've heard about EdLock, we had an extraordinary leader of a charter school in Indianapolis. Mayat Lands was with us yesterday speaking at our press conference. She was fire. Oh my gosh, extraordinary. Talking about what a beautiful school that literally is laser focused on getting kids to economic mobility in the heart of Indianapolis. I mean, just brilliant. Mayat needs help. She needs you to have her back. Get involved with EdLock and call Heather Harding. You can find her again. EdLock is everywhere on social media. So don't stay stuck. If you're hearing us saying, oh my gosh, I wish I was there, you're getting that FOMO, don't stay stuck. Come along with us. We need you right now.
Shout out to Sharonda Bossier, head of EdLock. Sister doing great work. Get involved. Do what you can when you can. Obviously, we want to talk about folks, particularly women of color, have been overworked in a lot of these spaces. But we want you to get involved. Brothers, please step up any way you can. Write, tweet, share this podcast, get people informed. One last thing, where's the bill now? We've been talking about this big, beautiful bill for the last 3 weeks. What happens now for those who are wondering, just sort of this policy wonk, folks? Where's the bill now and what happens next?
So we got to wait for the markup in all of these different committees. So everybody is going to take a look at the different pieces of these bills, and the committees are going to have their say around what they should look like in a larger Senate package, right? Now, it's anybody's guess, how quickly this is going to happen. The Senate is on recess in August. They go back home. There is some talk about, could we get this done by the 4th of July? I am deeply skeptical. I think that this is going to be a conversation we're going to have probably for the next 2 to 3 months, and it's going to be back and forth. But then again, it's really important at this point. Like we weren't anticipating, language to be coming out of Senate help or the finance language to come out, et cetera. But we know that there are some things that are in a logjam right now. For instance, the child tax credit. Lots of discussion about whether or not it should be $2,000. Should it be higher? How should it expire in 2027? Should it just be permanent? Like these are the little nuances of the bill that are being discussed in the various different committees. So it all really depends on people and how much progress they make. But the time to get in and make sure your voice is heard is now.
Thank you. I mean, there's so much going on, so many ways to get involved, so much of a need to get involved. And people are, moving around. Earlier this week, I was in Atlanta with the Charter Collaborative. Shout out to my sister Naomi Shelton. Also spent time at the Atlanta Tech Week, talking about AI, technology, and learning. I mean, folks in the technology world want to get involved in this. But just this morning, the reason why we're starting a little bit late is because I'm running from Washington, speaking in front of Black state legislators who are convening in Washington to talk about what's happening in education. And on that panel, I was on a panel with some great educators from around the country. But I brought up this one bill that I want to bring up now. It's SB 460 out of Nevada. And it created two things. It created open enrollment for students throughout the state of Nevada to be able to access schools outside of their zip code in their district with transportation. That's incredibly important. Most of you all who are in education, you all know most education in this country is zip code funded and zip code inequitable. I mean, I'm just sort of making up my own words there, but the idea that oftentimes people are trapped in their zip code. But if you can access schools and opportunities, in some cases, schools that are meant just for you and specialty schools, that we're seeing gains in many places. So just this week, I brought it up in front of some legislators there saying, take it back to your state. This bill that was recently passed and signed, open enrollment. It also included an accountability plan. This accountability plan really focuses on transparency and accountability in the school districts, but also they're really trying to improve recruitment and retention of teachers. But also this bill is also funding literacy interventions and pre-K options. All these things are collectively going to influence education from the classroom to the students, but allow students to be able to access different places. This transportation subsidy that they're going to offer in Nevada, incredibly important. So a lot of times people can get into a school, public charter school, but if there's no transportation, you're sort of self-selecting. And students can't access, we have a lot of options, but you don't have transportation, particularly for low-income folks. So this bill is going to do that. What did it also do? Something very important, Carrie. It creates something called the Education Service Center. And it's a state agency, and it's going to manage and provide services to the district, but also look at how it's going to sit in between the state and the local level. And in most places, only Nevada will be one of 11 states that actually has this sort of federally recognized intermediary that sits between these two groups. And so this idea of open enrollment, those of you are hearing about it, some of you all, if you're in Washington, D.C. or New Orleans and places like that, you understand there's a lot more availability to do that. This is not uncommon. Nevada is doing it, but more than 40 states allow for what we call inter-district open enrollment. And so this is something I think people should pay attention to, learn more about. Want to bring it back to your state. It's going to dramatically impact education in Nevada. This new group is also going to bring in a rating system and looking at underperforming schools in Nevada and look at how and give parents, to your point, a lot of information about how schools are doing to give them the best information to choose, because they have this open enrollment where they're sending their kids. That competition and transparency should lift schools that have been getting by, in some cases, not serving particularly Black and brown students. So I'm excited to see what happens in Nevada with this bill, Carrie, because information is key for parents particularly, but also options and transparency around, who goes where, but also ensuring that there's funding behind this, transportation and accountability. I'm looking forward to seeing how this works in Nevada.
Yeah, I like this for a whole bunch of reasons. The accountability piece is really important. And frankly, we know through the data, all the research that we've done, 86% of American families support public school choice and public school options. They want more choices. But the fact of the matter is, we don't set the conditions on the ground that make these choices possible. And that's why I love this bill in Nevada. We're working on something similar on the federal level because we'd like to see another pot of money become available outside of CSP, which is the charter schools program. We would like to see another pot of money that is made available to the states to be able to draw down funding from the federal government to help with some of these conditions around the things that you're talking about: transportation, facilities, making sure that we have teachers that are compensated, that we have the money that we're able to keep and retain teachers in these public school options. Because the fact of the matter is, we have these extraordinary schools. And you mentioned Naomi Shelton, some of the schools that she represents, and the innovative work that charter school leaders are doing in terms of creating these beautiful, creative, wonderful, culturally relevant schools that are just making a difference for kids. Some of them, unfortunately, aren't able to survive because the conditions on the ground, that they'll be starved of transportation dollars and kids can't make it there, or they can't find a place to even host the school itself. And it's always a fight with the district and the state. So we got to stop that, because it's clear, this is clear that this is what families want. And so we want to do our part to make sure the feds and their big pockets up there are doing what they can to make sure that the states are able to fund programs like this one in Nevada. So I think it's great, but I got to touch on that accountability piece. That accountability piece is key. And I think it's really the key to why a lot of parents love public charter schools and different options, because what I love about a charter school is that every 5 years in my state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you got to go in and defend your record. You've got to prove to parents in the community that you are getting the job done for kids. And Curtis, I don't know about you, the school that I went to didn't have to do that. It was a traditional public school, and it was allowed to fail kids generationally. My father went to the same school that I went to. He got in trouble. I went to the same school. I got tossed out. And I'm not that unique. They were not serving schools well in this community, but that school's allowed to go on. It doesn't have to justify its existence. They can just kind of shrug and keep it moving. Charter schools don't get to do that. They've got to go in and be accountable to the community to make sure they're doing the job. So more transparency for me, please. I love it.
Carrie, I mean, like, oftentimes the two of us, and we're around a lot of folks who are really passionate about education, and we have to come to one admission, Carrie. A lot of us were lucky. And this is too important that luck should not come in, should not be the driving force. I mentioned this open enrollment thing in Nevada. I grew up in New Jersey, Central New Jersey, represent 500 school districts, Carrie. And I was born into a township school district. I could not access any other schools outside of the one that I was zoned for. And I'm a one high school town. If I met you in kindergarten, I'm gonna see you at graduation. And so when and I made it, don't get me wrong, and I'm successful in a lot of ways. I'm so happy to have come here, and I've been blessed to do that. And in a lot of ways, I've been opportunities that I've had, but I was lucky in a lot of ways. A lot of my friends who grew up with me in the same town, are not as successful and don't have opportunities like you and I have, and a lot of us have, because the system didn't work for them. And so this is something that I think you and I are passionate about, because we know that we made it, but people just like us didn't.
The consequences are real. Listen, my husband, Jerry, God rest his soul, he and I met in high school. And he had a mind like a human calculator. The man was brilliant. We used to toss math problems at him to do in the car in his head, just for fun.
I love it.
And he had that brain. He went to the same high school I went to. And his parents were undocumented, didn't know how to navigate the system. Like, we were growing up in our community just trying to figure it out on our own. That is a man. We lived 1.5 miles from MIT. That should have gone to MIT. He couldn't get out of the first semester of Bunker Hill Community College here in the city of Boston. And that, you think about, again, Jerry, I loved him to death, but not unique. How much brilliance have we lost because we have kids that just weren't able to have options to be able to navigate the system, all these things. And that's why it scares me to death. These little boys I'm raising here, they got their daddy's brain. And you know what? I'm scared. I want to make sure that they have access to the right opportunities. So you bet your butt, I'm looking at the data. I'm trying to make the best choices for them to make sure that they don't lose track of any opportunity, because the consequences are real. Like you were saying, a lot of the kids that I would have graduated from with in 1996, they either didn't graduate from community college. A lot of them ended up lost in drug addiction and like are no longer with us. So that's a very real consequence of kids falling through these cracks.
Yeah, let's all agree, everybody who's listening, let's take the luck out of it. Let's take the luck of having the one teacher in the place that does well, and the one mentor that you happen to have because you won the lottery to get into a class. Let's take that out of there. One thing that's happening around the country, I want to pivot, and this is something that's getting a lot more attention. It's gaining traction around the country, and it's ironic because some of you all are listening to us and watching us on your cell phone, and God bless you. You're probably on your lunch break, or you're sharing this somehow with some friends. But there is a movement, a growing and a fast movement to ban cell phone use during the school day for students. And Washington, D.C., right where I just came from, is one of the latest jurisdictions to do that. They've joined 11 other states that have banned or restricted the use of cell phones for students in the school building. Another 7 states have issued policy recommendations, and an additional 17 states are introducing legislation around cell phone use. When it was passed in Washington, D.C., Superintendent Farabee talked about this, and he really talked about the idea that putting this in place is really going to increase classroom engagement, reduce anxiety, and sort of build what he believes are stronger student relationships. So that because they're not sort of focused on their cell phones. And the hope is that this is really going to impact DCPS, which is one of the few districts that actually did well on the NAEP exam, to continue to push them forward and ready to really scale what's happening. At the same time, at the federal level, there is a bipartisan Senate bill. It's being introduced similarly, that was introduced, around this. And it really studies the effects of cell phones on schools and proposes a $5 million annually for a pilot program to provide schools with what they call secure containers for the phones during the daytime. But it also, for those parents who are listening in, it does allow for exceptions for students with health conditions, disabilities, and non-English speakers who need their phones in emergencies. But you've been hearing from parents, particularly Carrie, on this. What are you hearing around the country around cell phone bans? Because it's growing, and we're going to be able to see what this impact has on student learning moving down the line.
I can tell you, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news for some who have hopped on this train, but American families, the majority of them are not with you.
Okay.
Fact of the matter is, all of this is backwards. Number one, they tell us that 74% of American families say that they don't think that states, whether it is state legislators, whether it is governors, should be touching this problem. This is a local issue that should be settled at the school level in communities where you have all the stakeholders making a decision about what is right for a school, what is right for a district. So we've got this decision making happening on the wrong level, according to American families. But the fact of the matter is they're not in support of total bans and for these pouches and all of these things, because while we hear you that there is potential for distraction, all of these other things, the fact of the matter is, in the United States, we love guns more than we love children. That is the fact of the matter. And when you take a look at Uvalde, and you take a look at Parkland, and you take a look at what those parents and survivors are saying, it was kids having cell phones that helped to de-escalate and save children's lives. And so in a country where we have still not been able to resolve that situation, parents are not ready for this. There are too many emergencies. There is not effective parent communication happening, and parents don't trust schools in that way. So what I would suggest to all of us, the reason why parents want this to be happening on the local level is because they think that they can be heard better on the local level in terms of the concerns that they have. The problem with this entire conversation has been there's only one side saying, There's distraction, there's lack of engagement, there's all of these things without the consideration of the very real concerns that American families have. The fact that, frankly, it's the issue with cell phones is actually just a symptom of a larger problem, which is a problem with student engagement. We have dead classrooms in the United States, and frankly, educators that have those effective relationships, that are engaging, that have good classroom management, typically don't have as big a struggle with cell phones as others do.
Yeah.
So this is a symptom of something we're seeing. And frankly, the fact that kids wanting to be engaged with something, anything, tells us our kids are not broken. They're looking for that engagement, and they're not finding it where they should be finding it, which is in the classroom.
I mean, this we want to watch. We're going to keep watching this. We'll bring it back up in future episodes. We'll look for the research. We'll hear back from parents and educators, and possibly we may even bring somebody on who can speak to what's happening in this space. But again, it's happening. We want you all to understand it's being passed. People are having these conversations. You ask yourself, are you at the table? Did you know this? Is it happening in your area right now? And you don't even know that. Make sure that you are tapped in. We're almost out of time, but we want to make sure that we don't leave without representing our legislative champion of the week. And this week we have State Senator Rashawn Kemp from Georgia. Clap it up for State Senator.
Yes.
Great guy, recently elected. He serves on the Senate committee, including the Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, Education and Youth, Government Oversight, State Institutions and Property, and Urban Affairs. Why is he so important? He's a former high school principal and someone who, has dedicated his life to education. And when he's not a state senator, he's a senior director at the National Charter Collaborative. What's that? We just mentioned Naomi Shelton. Naomi Shelton, one of the first things she did was she hired Rashawn Kemp, State Senator Rashawn Kemp, before he was a state senator. And what is National Charter Collaborative? They focus on amplifying the voices of Black and Brown public charter school leaders, particularly single site, smaller, smaller single site charter schools that are less funded, but also incredibly important. What did he do that we want to champion? A couple things. Well, he helped pass, even before he became a state senator, created the State Charter School Commission in Georgia. Something he did even before he became state senator. But what did he do when he became a state senator? One of the first bills he introduced was to improve student literacy by requiring what we call evidence-based reading instruction. We're hearing a lot about this around the country. The Mississippi Miracle, shout out to my co-director, Rachel Cantor, who's coming from Mississippi. This idea of the Mississippi Miracle, where they're pushing this idea of literacy and evidence-based reading instruction, the science of reading, and he's pushing that in Georgia. And so we want to definitely champion Senator Rashawn Kemp, really ensuring that students in Georgia have research-based teaching in literacy. He's bringing his education experience to the work he does every day, but most importantly, for his constituents there in Georgia in the state Senate. Shout out.
I gotta stop you right there. You forgot his most important title.
What's that?
He's Jaden and Brooklyn's daddy.
There you go. Okay.
He's a fired up dance dad.
Oh man.
Tell you about Senator Kemp. Okay. So I know he does it for his students. He does it for his community, but he is also a tremendous father, and he and his husband Ken just are extraordinary human beings. We love them to death. And boy, is he both feet on the ground, 10 toes down for those babies that he is doing just a beautiful job of raising. So we know that his work comes from a deep commitment to them, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And even in his first year, I gotta say, so proud to watch this man shine. And I could see him as governor of Georgia someday. I hope so.
Well, if he's going, I'm gonna have to move back there. I went to college in Georgia. Shout out to Morehouse and Spelman.
I was born there. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll come down too. He can get my.
If nothing else, I'll buy some property there. But thank you. So any final words before we go? Anything you're looking at next week, paying attention to that people should leave with before we wrap up, Carrie?
Well, I will tell you that I am actually going to be on vacation next week. I'm going to shut it down. I am going on a spiritual journey. I'm going to Fatima in Portugal to go. I'm a Catholic through and through, and so I'm going to go restore my and refill my cup so I can come back and get into this work. But there is always a lot to do. And I want to encourage people to really pay attention to what is happening in Los Angeles. We have a lot of friends there who are being impacted by what I would view as administration overreach and just some absolutely authoritarian behavior happening in Los Angeles. You're seeing protests popping up across the country. This Saturday will be No King's Day, so there's going to be protests across the country. We'll wait with bated breath to see what those folks are greeted with, and hopefully it will be peaceful and people will be able to express themselves as they should. But you know, in a country where we have United States senators being thrown to the floor for asking questions, there is no rest. And so I would advise everybody to make sure you're paying attention, you're paying vigilant, you're vigilant, and you're participating, and you're making sure that you are protecting yourself and protecting your community in this moment.
We'll be back next week. We will be here 12 o'clock next Friday. I want to have a guest co-host next week. And there may be instances where I'll be out and Carrie will have a guest co-host as well. But you can count on us being back here, back at 12 o'clock, our original time next Friday, for up-to-date news, politics, policy, advocacy, research, polling on education. We want to thank you all for spending the last half hour with us. The Union Podcast, Curtis Valentine, Carrie Rodriguez, thank you all so much. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.